Hey guys, it's Coach David here with a pre-cycle breakdown. So here we're going to talk about what you guys can expect over the next 6 weeks. Some things that are new compared to what we've been doing, some things that are the same as what we've been doing, and then a little bit about why we're doing some of the stuff that we're doing. Old stuff, same that you're going to be seeing from our last few cycles. You're still going to see interval work. You're still going to see conditioning work. We call that metabolic conditioning, or metcons for short. Interval work, you're going to have a period of work followed by a period of rest. Sometimes that rest is 1-to-1, so we have the same amount of work, so 2 minutes of work for 2 minutes of rest. Sometimes you'll see longer periods of work with shorter periods of rest. No matter what, whenever we see those intervals, how we're wanting to attack that is during the work cycle, we're going to work harder than we typically would if you just added all that work up together. So say there's 3 rounds, 3 minutes of work, 2 minutes of rest, as opposed to just working at the same pace as you would for a 9-minute metcon or a 9-minute conditioning piece. What I'm going to ask you to do is to increase your pace for that 3 minutes, because you know that you have that 2 minutes of work coming. So we're kind of using this as a way to artificially increase our intensity or artificially increase our power output for those short periods of time. Then I'm asking you to turn around and try and reproduce that intensity or that power output for the next 2 or 3, however many intervals. Conditioning, so you're going to see a couple different themes across the conditioning as well. You're going to see a little bit larger set sizes, and I want to say that larger set sizes relative to where you are. I'm going to ask that you sometimes hold on for bigger sets, whether that be with a barbell or whether that be in the gymnastic work. Push yourself to maybe a higher set size than you normally would have. Say you were typically in the place where you're doing sets of 3 on our pull-ups. Maybe this time we try to shoot for sets of 4 or sets of 5 for 2 sets or 3 sets. Pushing our comfort zone in terms of under metabolic fatigue, so under high heart rate, high respiration rate, maintaining higher volume of work. And again, that'll be specific to the individual. You'll also see the flip side of that, which is small work, maybe 3 or 4 movements where we're quickly moving through, and it doesn't necessarily make sense to break those up. However, with those 3 or 4 movements, we're going to really be focusing on our quickness of transitions between those intervals. So a lot of times, if we have a workout that's like a 20-minute workout and there's only 3 movements in there, say you get through 5 rounds, you get through 6 rounds of that, that's either 15 or 18 different transitions. And if we take an extra 5 seconds, we're talking about an extra 30, 40 seconds of rest that we're taking in that conditioning piece that aren't purposefully moving us forward. So if we get some work done and we take a rest in the middle, I would call that conditional or rest that's going to continue to move that work forward. On the new end of things, you guys are reading through this already, so you've already seen. On the new end of things, we have our complexes this cycle. They're going to be new complexes compared to what we've done in the past. We're going to be seeing some snatch and clean complexes. These are opportunities for us to practice really 3 different, although related concepts here. One of them is mental toughness or mental fortitude. Complexes, for lack of a better word, suck. They require a lot of intense focus. They require a high amount of energy for each repetition. So if you're doing a complex that involves, I don't know, let's say a squat clean or power clean followed by a hang squat clean followed by a front squat, and then you have some shoulder to overheads in there as well. In order to get 1 repetition there, you have to spend a long time doing so, and that takes a lot of focus, a lot of mental toughness. There's also something about adding a little bit of weight and having to do that exact same thing over again once your heart rate is up out of control, and you have kind of like that the world zoning in or honing in terms of your focus. It takes a lot of mental toughness, mental fortitude to continue forward. So common muscular fatigue is the second one there, the second theme in terms of complexes. First one that comes to mind is grip fatigue. So if you're not a hook gripper, you're going to be very aware of your hands and your grip during this. Even if you are a hook gripper, you're probably still going to be very aware of your hands and your grip. That might be a limiting factor for some of us. And that's okay. That's what we're trying to learn. That's what we're trying to figure out in this cycle. Similarly, if we have, again, just throwing this one out there, say we do a squat snatch followed by a hang squat snatch followed by 2 overhead squats, there's going to be some local shoulder fatigue or general muscular shoulder fatigue, common muscular shoulder fatigue, in that overhead position as we hang on to the squat snatch, and then we hang on to our hang squat snatch, and then we have that barbell up overhead again for 2 more overhead squats. And this is kind of like we're compressing some strength training into some technique work at the same time. So you're getting technique work of the snatch while you're also getting some local stability, strength work of the shoulder. Forcing ourselves to be in good positions is going to be of utmost importance during these complexes, and we'll get into that in just a second. Efficiency of movement and decreasing time under tension is my last theme here. when it comes to complexes. So the person who's going to do the best in these movements or in these complexes isn't necessarily the strongest person, but it's typically the person who is going to either have the most efficient movement, so they're going to be expending the least amount of energy for each of those movements that they're doing in the complex, as well as the person who's able to decrease the time under tension. So what we're looking for, as I mentioned with those smaller sets in the Metcons, is decreasing the time it takes to switch between one movement. As we're doing these complexes, I want to see trying to minimize the amount of time that it takes to go from let's say a power clean back into a hang squat clean, as opposed to sitting there with it on your shoulders for a long period of time and starting to get fatigued through our upper back, fatigued through our hands, fatigued through our shoulders, and then we try to go back into our next set and it takes a long time. Still maintaining crisp, clean, good movement, points of performance to the movement, absolutely, but doing so in a way that minimizes the amount of time that weight is overall sitting on our structure is what we're also looking for. And this kind of leads into this overall concept of what we're looking for in this next cycle, and really kind of in every cycle altogether. And that's the economy of movement. This is a fancy way of saying, are we doing I'm going to call it the least amount of energy necessary to perform a task, and also doing it as efficiently as possible. There's really three different things that we're looking for underneath this economy of movement, or three different breakdowns under this economy of movement. The most common, I think, is this number one here, and this fatigue-induced. And you see the quote that I have next to it, which is slow down to speed up. As you have fatigue-induced breakdown of economy of movement, this could be the person who has just learned kipping pull-ups, and they have pretty good kipping pull-ups for maybe 2 reps, but then we get a higher heart rate, we get a little bit of a high breath rate as well, and all of a sudden we're just kind of flopping around on the bar. Those are the times where it's good to slow down, take a deep breath, focus yourself, try to get that heart rate back down as much as possible, slowing down so that we can speed back up and keep good technique. This also automatically will give us a better chance of lifting a heavier weight as we get to those complexes as well. Next one up, we have our structure induced, and this is typically when I look at like range of motion. So if we're looking at our squatting, we're going to probably see, I don't know, maybe something in the 5 rep range for our back squats this cycle. 1, 3, 5. Yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. And as you see this, if you are limiting, or if you're limited, maybe your upper back strength, and as you come up out of the squat, and you're like me, you come up out of the squat and you have the tendency to do this, as opposed to continuing to put yourself in this poor position and continuing to be limited. So you're going to say put yourself in good positions. So that might increase, that might call for some reduction in load, which is getting into this third one a little bit, but also might say instead of purely putting myself in a position maybe in my cleans or my squat cleans where my elbows are dropping the entire time, I'm going to make sure as I'm warming up that I'm forcing myself into a good position so that I continue to display that good position as long as possible. And that leads me directly into this third one, which is strength failure induced. And that has a little bit more to do with if we have localized muscular strength issues. So like if we have bicep strength issues or lat strength issues that don't allow us to continue to kip or to continue pulling in our pull-ups, we need to reduce the load, and so that might be in a pull-up we add a band so that we're able to hit larger sets and continue to focus on good technique, continue to focus on good positions while we also are continuing to increase our strength in those positions. So reducing load and addressing those weaknesses. This could also be similar to my upper back thing and my upper back rounding during my back squats or my front squats, as opposed to continuing to load this position and continuing to rework a structure that is not conducive to lifting a heavier load or being more efficient or being economical with my movement. It would be lowering the load, so reducing the load and putting myself in a good position as I continue to work on some thoracic extension drills, focusing on keeping the rib cage down, practicing keeping my thoracic spine, my upper spine extended. That could even be while we're doing these overhead squats, and this is the kind of cool thing about this carryover of movement here, is that as we have the overhead squat, we have that overhead position fighting for thoracic extension as we keep the rib cage down, does in fact carry over to being in a front squat fighting for thoracic extension while keeping the rib cage down and trying to keep those elbows high. As we focus on those 3 movements or those 3 themes of economy of movement, we will find ourselves kind of working through all of this in the next 6 weeks to improve maybe our technique, to improve our scores, to improve our performances, and overall just going to try and be as successful as we possibly can in this next cycle 3 coming up in this next week. So good luck, guys. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, find a coach, ask them how best you can do one of these 3 economy of movement themes, or how best you can address your complexes, address your intervals, address your metcons. That's exactly what we're here for. Good luck, guys. I know it's going to be awesome.